The village of Ravenwood lay beneath a sky so heavy with clouds, it seemed the sun had forgotten to rise. Mist crawled through the crooked streets like a living thing, curling around shutters, fences, and the few lanterns that dared flicker. Every step on the cobblestones echoed with a hollow sound, swallowed almost immediately by the fog. Villagers moved silently, their faces pale, as if the mist had leached the warmth from their cheeks. The market square was deserted, save for a few wagons abandoned by merchants who had given up on selling that morning. A distant bell tolled from the old chapel, each clang reverberating like a warning. Elias, a tall man with a cloak caked in mud from the long journey, stepped through the square. His eyes, dark and keen, scanned every corner. He had heard stories of Ravenwood, of the shadows that seemed to watch, of the vanishings that left families broken, and hushed whispers in taverns. But the tales did not prepare him for the smell. Damp wood, rotting leaves, and the faint metallic tang that made his stomach twist. He paused, feeling the weight of unseen eyes. A black cat darted across the street, its fur blending with the mist. For a moment, Elias imagined he saw a figure watching from a window. Then it vanished. He shook his head and pressed on. Each step seemed to echo not only through the village, but inside his chest. The fog clung to him, and he realized he could no longer see the edges of the buildings clearly. In Ravenwood, the world seemed both smaller and infinitely larger. Elias entered the Silver Raven Inn, its sign swinging in the breeze with a creak like a mournful sigh. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and the scent of stale ale. The innkeeper, a wiry man named Garrick, peered at him over the counter, eyes sharp but wary. "You shouldn't have come here," Garrick said, voice low and gravelly. "Ravenwood doesn't forgive curiosity." Elias studied him, noting the trembling of Garrick's hands. "I'm only passing through. I seek information. The kind that gets people killed." Garrick's gaze flicked toward the back rooms. Shadows moved behind the curtains, shifting as though alive. He leaned closer. "People vanish, stranger. Children, travelers, even the strong ones. This village carries an old hunger, and it always takes what it wants." Elias nodded slowly, feeling the weight of Garrick's words settle over him. Outside, the fog thickened, pressing against the windows like a physical presence. He caught glimpses of figures through the haze, shapes that lingered, paused, and then dissolved when looked at directly. As he drank his ale, he listened to the muffled conversations around him. Every word seemed layered with tension, every laugh edged with fear. One old woman muttered to a man beside her about lights flickering in the woods, voices calling names in the night. Elias's hand instinctively went to the hilt of his dagger, though he was careful not to draw attention. The village seemed alive with secrets, and he knew that by morning, he would either be a witness to something terrible or a part of it. Night fell like a shroud. The fog thickened, swallowing even the lamplight in narrow streets. Elias wandered toward the outskirts, drawn by stories of the old chapel and the ruins beyond. He noticed the first signs of unease, footprints in the mud, large and small, converging and vanishing, as if erased by some unseen force. Then he heard it, a soft, keening sound, like a child crying in the distance. But when he followed it, he found nothing. The cry returned, closer this time, echoing off the walls of abandoned houses. The sound was too real to be the wind, too deliberate to be imagined. Elias's heart thumped in rhythm with the invisible steps around him. A shadow moved at the corner of his vision, a figure hunched, cloaked in black. It watched, waiting. When he turned fully, there was nothing but the fog. Yet the feeling of being observed intensified. Elias's mind raced. Was it a ghost? A villager hiding? Or something older? He remembered the tales of the Watcher of Ravenwood, a being said to roam when the mist was thickest, taking what belonged to it. He pressed on, but the path seemed unfamiliar, twisting and elongating as though the village itself were rearranging. Each house, each alley, seemed to shift when he wasn't looking. His senses screamed caution, yet some part of him, a curiosity, a stubbornness, drove him forward. Through the swirling mist, he found two children, barefoot, ragged, their eyes wide with fear. They clutched each other tightly, muttering words he could barely understand. Elias knelt beside them. "Who are you?" he asked softly. "Leela and Finn," the girl whispered. We were taken." Her words broke off as a shiver ran through her. The boy's gaze darted to every shadow, as though the mist itself were hunting them. Elias noticed their thin frames, bruises hidden beneath tattered clothes, the dirt that caked their hair and hands. They had been running for days, and yet, even in their terror, there was a glimmer of defiance, a determination to survive that reminded him of something he had long buried. He offered them warmth, shared his cloak, and listened as they spoke in halting sentences about their village, overrun by an unseen danger, consumed by fear and vanishings. Their tale was fragmented, but the pattern was clear. Something hunted them, something relentless. By the time the fog lifted slightly, Elias knew he could not weave them. Their survival had become his responsibility. And as they walked together toward the heart of Ravenwood, the shadows seemed to stir, waiting for the right moment to strike. The chapel stood at the village center, a monument to decay. Its windows were broken, and the bell hung crooked in the tower. Inside, dust and cobwebs covered pews and altars alike. Yet something pulsed here, a residue of old rituals, of promises made in blood and fire. Elias and the children explored carefully. Symbols were carved into the wooden beams, ancient and foreign. A sense of history pressed down upon them, heavy and undeniable. Leela traced her fingers over a symbol etched into the altar, whispering, They knew we'd come. Elias felt a chill as he realized the chapel was a crossroads, not just of paths, but of time, memory, and intention. Shadows shifted along the walls, forming shapes that almost resembled people, frozen in moments that might have been centuries old. He realized this place had been a witness, and perhaps a participant, in something far darker than any single villager's fear. As the children whispered among themselves, Elias discovered a hidden passage beneath the altar, a narrow stair leading into the bowels of the building. A draft of cold, stale air rose, carrying the faint scent of iron and decay. He felt the weight of unseen eyes, and for the first time, wondered if Ravenwood itself were alive. The stairs descended into a crypt, lined with niches holding skeletal remains, their bones yellowed and brittle. Dust floated in the beam of his lantern, catching like tiny stars. The air was thick, oppressive, and tinged with the unmistakable odor of death. Each step echoed as though the crypt itself were amplifying their presence. The children clung to Elias, their small hands trembling. But he felt an odd sense of purpose, a calling, a mission he did not yet fully understand. In the center of the crypt lay a stone sarcophagus, its lid carved with intricate patterns. As Elias brushed away the dust, he discovered a set of runes, glowing faintly, as if awakened by his touch. The light reflected in the children's wide eyes, mixing fear with awe. Suddenly, a sound, a whisper, soft and urgent, speaking words he did not understand. Lila repeated them, carefully, as though recalling a memory embedded deep in her soul. The air thickened, shadows shifted, and for the first time, as they returned to the village, the fog had lifted slightly, revealing faces of villagers staring from windows and doorways. There was curiosity, fear, and unspoken questions. Shadows lingered in alleys, watching, following, and retreating when noticed. Elias realized the village itself was a participant in the events. The mist, the streets, the forgotten buildings, they were all attuned to something he had only begun to glimpse. The children, sensing their growing courage, began to speak, their voices small but defiant, and with each word, the shadows seemed to respond, drawing back or twisting in agitation. Elias knew they had awakened forces far older than the village, and that their actions would ripple through time. Every alley, every shutter, every cobblestone now seemed alive with memory, expectation, and latent danger. They were confronted by the village elders, a council of 5, who claimed knowledge of the crypt's secrets. Their eyes glinted with suspicion, fear, and perhaps envy. "You have trespassed," one said, voice low and authoritative. "You do not understand the balance here. The village, it feeds on certain energies, certain truths. You have disturbed what should remain buried." Elias stepped forward. "We only seek to understand, to protect these children. Whatever you call balance, it cannot come at the cost of innocent lives." Arguments flared, voices rose, and the fog swirled around the building, pressing against walls and windows as though the village itself were listening. The children whispered the cryptic phrases they had learned, and the elders' expressions changed from anger to fear. Suddenly, a sound, a deep, resonant hum, filled the chamber. The runes from the crypt beneath began to glow faintly. Shadows coalesced into shapes that mirrored their fears. It was a test, a reckoning. The runes revealed an ancient pact, a story of betrayal, loss, and unfinished debts. Elias realized that Ravenwood was a place suspended between worlds, a liminal space where consequences lingered far longer than in the outside world. The children, Lila and Finn, were key to resolving the ancient wrongs. Their courage, their persistence, and their bond carried an unspoken power that even the village could not resist. Elias guided them as they confronted the source, a shadowed figure, tall, cloaked, face obscured, whose presence radiated control and judgment. Through dialogue, clever questioning, and invoking the words they had learned in the crypt, the children forced the figure to reveal the truth. Ravenwood had been cursed by betrayal centuries ago, and only the innocence of the willing could undo it. As dawn broke, the fog dissipated entirely, revealing the village in a new light. Faces softened, shadows retreated, and the oppressive weight of history lifted slightly. The children were safe, and Elias understood his purpose: to ensure the cycle of fear and loss would not continue. Villagers emerged, hesitant but relieved. The council bowed their heads, acknowledging the courage of the outsiders. The crypt's secrets were preserved, but the curse was weakened. And though darkness would always linger, a spark of hope had been ignited, proof that even in the grimmest places, courage, truth, and human connection could shift the balance. Elias, Lila, and Finn departed Ravenwood, leaving behind a village that would remember them in whispers for generations. The fog rolled back in the evening, but now it felt less threatening, more like a shroud protecting memories rather than consuming lives.